All right, so let's welcome back in our powerhouse panel. We start with a co-host of Wake Up America Weekend, Allison Maloney, political analyst Mark Halperin, and National Advisory Board member to Project 21, Christopher Arps. So, Mark, since I cut you off, I want to go to you first. The House is expected to vote on President Biden's spending agenda. Now, this basically has been a dumpster fire. There's been up, it's been down, it's been added, subtracted. What do you think about how this is actually going to turn out?
I think they may vote today, but I'm not sure they will. As of 5 a.m., they didn't have 218 votes for either the infrastructure bill or for the big Build Back Better so-called spending bill. But even if it passes today, it's got a long way to go. And Democrats who think their problem with the public on Election Day was they're fighting too much with each other, the fighting is going to continue at least through Christmas because the Senate's going to pass its own version. And it's still not clear to me how the Senate and House is going to see eye to eye, how AOC and Joe Manchin are going to vote for the same bill.
Well, actually, that's the same thing, Chris, is you had obviously this election, Democrats got schwacked across the entire nation, and the far left endorsed candidates got just absolutely destroyed. One of them even got destroyed by a write-in candidate. So when you have that this is the first time that Joe Biden's policies are actually on the ballot. When you have something like that, do you think that this is making the moderates be like, look, we just lost a blue state, let's maybe hold or get this off to the side because I'd rather have no agenda to run on in 22 than this agenda?
You would think so. I mean, how do you make an argument that you should stay in control next year when you control all the levers of government, but you can't get anything passed? It's going to be very, very difficult for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're spot on there. Allison, how do you, look, you're in the world of PR. How do you spin this if you're the White House?
Oh, gosh, I wouldn't want that job because I don't really know if they can fit. There's so much infighting going on because there's such a divide, right? In the party, you've got progressives, the AOCs, and you have the Joe Manchin. And they realized after Tuesday night what's going on. Americans are not for these progressive policies. So the moderates are trying to figure out how do we stay in line because it's all about 2022. So what do? I mean, something has to pass. And the thing is that we had this infrastructure bill, right? That was ready to go. That was something that everyone agreed upon. But then that stopped. And so now they just keep pumping money, keep pumping these policies in this bill that we don't really know what's in there.
Right. And AOC says, oh, we lost because we weren't far enough left. It's like, whew, okay,
right.
All right, so I want to talk about the Supreme Court case. All right, so everybody knows Heller versus D.C., 2008. The Supreme Court affirmed that it's the right of the people to keep arms. You could keep them in your home. Well, now there's been a new case that came on that said, do we have the right to bear arms? I don't think it's in the same sentence. It's in the same amendment. You would think that it would be cut and dry. So they had these. I read actually the entire 138-page transcript the other day of the court case. And Mark, I was blown away by the arguments from the other side were like, but, it could be dangerous. And even Chief Justice Roberts, of all guys, was like, so you're making the case that you should only have them in rural areas, but all the gun crime and people wanting to defend themselves is in urban areas. It was a very odd argument from the defense side that was against, there was a gun group in New York that wants the right to have a permit. They're happy to go get the permit. So what do you tell people that are just seeking a right to defend themselves? And the state of New York has said, no, you can't. And now it's at the Supreme Court. Where do you think this goes, Mark?
Look, President Trump's probably most enduring legacy, I think he'd agree, is the court appointments, not just the Supreme Court, but the lower federal courts. And we're kind of all waiting to see whether his three justices, along with the other Republican-appointed justices still on the court, whether they're going to start really overturning some of these precedents, adding to precedents, and remaking the country through their decisions. Guns is one issue, the Second Amendment, but there are lots of others, and we're just sort of waiting to see if they'll pull the trigger, so to speak, on that.
Yeah, and Chris, the founders couldn't have made it any simple. Right to keep and bear shall not be infringed. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're perfectly correct. And it seems like the Second Amendment is the only amendment where you have to prove that that you deserve it. I mean, the stipulations and all the hoops and hurdles that you have to go through in New York to exercise your Second Amendment right is just ridiculous. It's almost as bad as during the voting rights era in the 60s when you had to count how many jelly beans were in a jar to be able to vote. It's practically the same process to get a gun in New York.
Well, that's actually interesting. And Allison, the fundamental argument from the New York gun owners or want-to-be gun owners is, do I have the right to not lay down and be a chalk line on the ground and defend myself against people who might want to do bad, or do I not have that right? And to address what they said is like, if the argument was, oh, well, it's in the jurisdiction of a judge, and it's like, if it's at the jurisdiction of a judge, is it a right or is it a privilege at that point, Allison?
Well, it should be a right. We're talking about the Second Amendment. And, people in New York, think about all of the police officers that we now don't have on the force. Think about the crime. So people want to be able to protect themselves. We've seen an increase in crime. We've seen an increase in drugs, homelessness. We don't know what's going to happen. And so it is people's right to bear arms. It's not a privilege. It's a right. That's what the Second Amendment says. Yeah, and it's the lawful gun owners that are the ones not committing crime. It's the thousands of guns illegally out on the street in New York that is the real problem. It is interesting. We'll see. Appreciate the panel being here. We'll see you in the next hour.